The stench hits you miles before the city walls. It is June 1462 near Târgoviște. Sultan Mehmed II, the man who toppled Constantinople, pulls his reins tight, his face draining of color. Before him lies a valley planted not with crops, but with 20,000 Ottoman prisoners lifted high on rough-hewn stakes. This is the masterwork of Vlad the Impaler, a prince who has turned the land itself into a weapon against the empire that raised him. Above the silent field, a single blackbird bends on a wooden post that glistens with grease and old blood. This oiled timber is the only law that remains here. Why would a vassal prince invite such total annihilation upon his own territory? And what specific, calculated secret was Vlad trying to hide behind this wall of decaying bodies? The wood remembers what the history books forgot. If you enjoy these dark histories, leave a like and subscribe, and comment below where you're listening from. And now, back to the story. The catastrophe of the night attack fades, replaced by the rhythmic clanking of iron shackles. It is the morning of June 18th, 1462. The smoke from the Ottoman camp still clings to the damp wool of the captives' tunics. Thousands of Mehmed's elite Janissaries, men who were promised the wealth of Wallachia, are now stripped of their armor and herded like cattle toward Târgoviște. There is no glory here, only the smell of wet earth and the bruising grip of Wallachian guards. The descent is not just into a dungeon, but into a system of administrative cruelty. Vlad does not merely cage his enemies, he sorts them. In the courtyards of the princely court, scribes with wax tablets record ranks, not names. The individuality of the soldier is erased, replaced by a utility value. High-ranking commanders are separated from the foot soldiers. The oiled timber appears again, stacked in the corners of the yard, raw and unsharpened, a silent promise of what is to come. The prisoners are forced to strip the bark from the very wood that will claim them, their hands sticky with sap and dread. Vlad walks among them, speaking perfect Turkish. He spent his own youth as a hostage in the Ottoman court. He knows their fears because they were once his own. He offers a twisted form of mercy. He whispers to the terrified infantry that they might be spared if they renounce the Sultan. He offers bread to those who will curse Mehmed's name. It is a test, but the price of passing is the loss of their soul. A trap closes fastest when the bait is freedom. Most do not speak. The resistance here is quiet, found in the stiffening of a spine or the refusal to meet the prince's gaze. They are Janissaries, raised to die for the Porte, and they retreat into a disciplined silence. In the center of the courtyard, the captured envoys, including the Pasha Hamza Bey, stand apart. They still wear their ceremonial turbans, a mark of their station and their religion. They expect the courtesy of war, ransom, exchange, or a swift beheading. Vlad approaches them. He asks why they do not remove their headgear in his presence. It is a game. He knows the custom. He knows they cannot uncover their heads before a Christian prince without shame. They refuse, clinging to the protocol of the court they left behind. Vlad smiles, his face pale against the gray stone of the fortress walls. He commends their loyalty to tradition. He tells them he wishes to strengthen their customs, to ensure they never have to break them. He signals the guards, who step forward not with swords, but with hammers and long iron nails. The silence of the courtyard is broken only by the dull thud of metal driving into bone. Tradition creates a cage that no key can open. The valley outside Târgoviște is no longer a battlefield. It is a construction site of death. The air is thick with the smell of rendering fat and fresh sawdust. Teams of Wallachian laborers, silent and pale, work in shifts to strip the branches from thousands of trees. They are preparing the oiled timber, stout poles, greased with animal fat not to burn, but to slide. The tip is not sharpened to a point, but rounded and oiled. This is the crucial, horrific engineering of the Impaler. A sharp point kills too quickly, piercing vital organs. A rounded tip, driven by the victim's own body weight, pushes organs aside, prolonging the agony for days. Vlad offers a final, unspoken condition to the mass of gathered prisoners. It is a choice between a quick death by the sword or the slow ascent of the stake. The condition for the quick death is total submission, a weeping betrayal of their sultan, a performance of fear that Vlad can use to feed his legend. He needs them to scream. He needs the sound of their terror to travel on the wind back to the approaching Ottoman main force. But the Janissaries offer him nothing. These are men taken as boys in the Devshirme, raised in the barracks of Edirne, to know nothing but the Sultan's will and the silence of the drill. Deprived of water for 2 days, their tongues swollen, they do not beg. When the guards drag the first lines of men toward the prone stakes, there are no grand speeches of defiance. Hamza Bey, the highest-ranking captive, his vision obscured by the blood drying beneath the iron nails in his skull, utters only a cold refusal. He gestures with a bound hand to the highest stake, demanding the position befitting his rank. He treats the instrument of his torture as a podium. Pain is finite. Shame lasts forever. The process begins. It is slow, mechanical, and intimate. The prisoners are forced to lie down. The stakes are positioned. Teams of horses are used to hoist the timber upright, once the human burden is attached. As the poles rise, the gravity takes hold. The prisoners are suspended, their feet dangling feet above the grass. Here, the meaning of their suffering inverts. Vlad intended this tableau to be a testament to his chaotic power, a chaotic breakage of the human form. Instead, the Janissaries turn it into a demonstration of iron will. As the sun climbs over Wallachia, the valley does not fill with the cacophony of screaming that Vlad desired. It fills with a low, rhythmic groaning, a chant of the dying that sounds less like panic and more like prayer. Their training, designed to make them conquerors, now allows them to endure the unendurable, with a stoicism that terrifies the Wallachian executioners. They do not thrash. They hang still, conserving their remaining life, turning their bodies into statues of accusation. We now understand the why. This was never merely about sadism, nor was it simple madness. Records suggest Vlad had a force of fewer than 30,000 men to oppose Mehmed's 150,000. He could not win a war of steel. He had to win a war of the mind. The price of this victory was the total forfeiture of his humanity. He spent 20,000 lives to build a psychological wall that no siege engine could breach. He turned the prisoners into a landscape of horror so absolute that the Ottoman army, the greatest fighting force on earth, would simply refuse to walk through it. The grease on the wood gleams in the twilight. Hamza Bey is raised on the tallest stake, dressed in his fine robes, elevated above his men even in death. He looks south toward the approaching Sultan. He is dead, but he is still standing. The trial is over. The silence of the forest is heavier than the soil. A dead man stands guard longer than a living one. The sun beats down on the valley, but the air is freezing. It is a cold born not of weather, but of a profound biological wrongness. The Ottoman army, a sprawling dragon of steel and silk that stretches for miles, comes to a grinding, confused halt. They have arrived at the outskirts of Târgoviște, expecting a siege, the crash of cannons, the desperate sortie of a trapped prince. Instead, they find the forest of the Impaled. It is a city of the dead, a grid of suffering laid out with geometric precision. The vanguard stops first. Then the silence ripples backward, rank by rank, until 150,000 men are standing perfectly still. There is no order given to halt. The body simply refuses to march forward. The oiled timber motif has reached its final, terrible evolution. The stakes are no longer tools of torture. They are the trees of a new, grotesque orchard. They cover an area nearly 3 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide. The right here is wordless. The Ottoman soldiers, hardened veterans of Anatolia and the Balkans, do not jeer. They do not avert their gaze. They stare. It is a collective act of witnessing that burns the image into the generational memory of the empire. They walk slowly through the rows, their boots sinking into mud, made slick by the fluids dripping from above. The only sound is the wind, whistling through the forest of stakes, and the flapping of carrion birds that have grown so fat they can barely fly. The dead do not blink when you approach. In the center of this necropolis, Sultan Mehmed II finds the hidden place Vlad prepared for him. It is not a hidden bunker or a treasure room, but a specific vantage point. Here, the stakes are highest. Here, Hamza Bey and the other envoys rot in their silk robes, preserved in their agony. But the revelation is not just the bodies, it is the absence of the enemy. Byzantine chronicler Leonikos Chalkokondyles records the moment the Sultan's spirit broke. He writes that the Sultan, a man who conquered the unconquerable city of Constantinople, looked upon this field and asked, "How can I despoil a man who does this?" It was not a question of strategy. It was a question of nature. Vlad was not fighting a military campaign. He was conducting a ritual of psychological erasure. The hidden truth reveals itself in the archives and the lack of battle scars on the land. There was no great final stand at Târgoviște. Vlad had already vanished into the Carpathians, leaving this tableau as his rearguard. He knew he could not defeat the Ottoman army with swords. So, he weaponized the very site of his capital. He turned his own subjects and his enemies into a shield of horror. The mercy he offered back in the courtyard, to die quickly or slowly, was the only currency he had left to spend. The Sultan orders the army to turn back. He does not burn the city. He does not pursue the prince. He simply leaves. The conqueror is defeated not by a superior force, but by a sickness in the soul. A nightmare is the only wall you cannot climb. The Ottoman army marches south, silence hanging over the ranks like a shroud. Behind them, the valley is left to the slow, grinding work of the seasons. Nature is efficient where men are cruel. The sun dries the flesh. The wolves scatter the bones. The rain washes the grease from the posts. The oiled timber, once the supreme law of the land, cracks and splinters, eventually surrendering to the weeds. In the chancelleries of Constantinople, the scribes dip their reeds into dark ink, but the hand hesitates. The official chronicles of the 1462 campaign are curiously brief. They speak of the Sultan's tactical withdrawal, of the heat, of the difficult terrain. They do not describe the 20,000 faces staring down from the sky. To record the horror in detail would be to admit that the empire had blinked. So they choose erasure. The names of the dead Janissaries are not crossed out. The pages are simply left blank. Vlad's victory buys him time, but not salvation. Years later, his own head is severed, preserved in a jar of honey to stop the rot. and displayed on a high pike in the Ottoman capital. The architect of the stake finally becomes its decoration. But the true monument is not his head, nor the empty grave at Snagov Monastery, where monks claim he rests. Return to the valley today. The stakes are gone. The city of Târgoviște is modern, alive. Farmers plow the fields where the forest of death once stood, but the crops here grow tall and dark. The soil is heavy, rich with iron and calcium. The specific silence of that June morning has dissipated, but the story refuses to stay buried. The vampire myth that eventually consumed Vlad's name was a necessary fiction, a mask to cover a face too human and too brutal to look at directly. The blackbird from the opening scene is long dead, but the warning it perched upon remains in the blood of the earth. Subscribe, hit the bell, and like. History buries the dead, but never the memory.